is because with all these changes, the government's flow of funds to the states have come down. I am not surprised that neither Telangana nor Andhra has been given much of a better thing, because government of India itself has lost the 10% because of the devolution that has taken place. So unless it is able to collect the 10%, it may not be able to help very much unless it resorts to more taxation. So we need to also appreciate the point of view. The other thing that is very important is, look at what has happened till the past and how can I do it now. Second, can we not look at district level indices to be developed, to also look at the resources district level and then decide what should be the plan of action. And today, can we not think in terms of a planning board in the state, so that the planning board like NITI at the Delhi can actually ensure that the viewpoints are taken into account. And can Telangana Chamber of Commerce look at for four important things: awareness about the economy, alertness about what should be done, advocacy and what should be actually done, and the action plan that we will submit to the government. These are, I think, essential issues which the Telangana Chamber of Commerce and Industry, in my humble opinion, requires to be looked into. And I am sure Mr. Venkateswar, knowing him for a long number of years, he will certainly do it. Also at the same time, smart cities. How do we actually develop many of the districts as smart cities? Warangal, for example, is an educational hub. Karimnagar as an agro-processing industry. Khammam as a mining area. We have a lot of scope. Only question is, we have to sit down and think about what it is. So some sort of a intellectual group to be formed to be able to actually articulate these things. So I come back to again the other thing, and that is, all said and done, a budget is an exercise in balancing needs and resources, prioritization and fixing of a time frame, where necessary a mid-course correction, getting more bang for the buck and not saying the buck stops here, getting more bang for the buck, bridging promise and performance, top down to bottom up, also at the same time securing public support. Normally we prepare plans, but we don't deliberate on the plan before the budget is prepared. There should have been a discussion, dialogue, debate before the budget is prepared. Not commenting on the budget, did not do this or did not do that. So this is another way of actually looking at this exercise. And another very important thing is, the government said it is a round the year and round the clock, 24/7. Jaitley has given a different meaning to that particular thing. But what is important is, complete the incomplete projects, so that let some return come from what is there. That is very important. And three things: infrastructure, investment and innovation. Also at the same time, cut down the subsidies so that you are able to do. And public-private partnership. The entire public-private partnership in the road sector has gone awry. Nothing is moving in the road sector in respect of roads, in respect of ports, railways. Very important. Also at the same time, banking sector, pension and insurance funds, how do you mobilize it according to your time frame? And more importantly, and I'll conclude with my overall remarks, one is, overall, given the constraints, given the difficulties, it is a balanced budget. Fiscal consolidation along with reviving growth seems to be the thing, but it is hamstrung because it doesn't have adequate resources. It has outlined a social security scheme, which is a very good feature. Mobilization through tax-free bonds and disinvestment, I think, will pick up. And there has to be a planned reduction in subsidies and slashing central schemes and making business easy to do and putting a curb on black money and securing public investment. 70,000 crores is too small a figure for a large country like India. And in the end, let me conclude by saying, and because all of you are industries, Sanskritanlo oka manchi sukti undannamata. Vastur Mulyam. Vastu means any article, any service. Mulyam means price, more. Vastur Mulyam Pramanena, quality standard income. Pramanena, samayena, timely delivery. Mitavyena, at the least cost. Sevena, with a feeling of seva, service. Only when these four things are combined, then what happens? Mulyam becomes amulyam, mole becomes unmole. So how do you make something very valuable? This is the secret that we need to actually capture. Also at the same time, lastly I want to tell you only one thing, and I will stop with that. There are only 5 sutras, Pancha Sutra. Put in hard work, do smart work, have teamwork, have network. Homework, hard work, smart work, teamwork, network. These 5 are extremely important. Can you please tell me what is common in all these 5 things? So no fellow can be without doing work. In Tirupati temple, God is woken up by saying, Kartavyam Daivamannikam. Oh God, please get up, you are still sleeping. So, the same thing applies to us also. This is very, very important. And lastly, God has given to each one of us 4 powerful forces. Are we able to mobilize these 4? 1, Gnana Shakti, the power of the intellect, the power of the mind, the power of the brain. Gnana Shakti. Prana Shakti, the power of the spirit, the power of the breath, Swasa. दम है क्या? वो तो दम तोड़ दिया. You say this is dam is very important. And the third thing is Ichha Shakti, Hridaya Shakti. That is in your heart, love, desire, ambition. Last is Kriya Shakti. I will do it. I can do. I can do. Very powerful. And that Kriya Shakti. These 4 Shaktis must be mobilized. These 4 factors have 4 actors on the ground. Who are the actors on the ground? Karta, the fellow who has to deliver. Karayita, the fellow who has to get it done, manager. Then Preranascha, the boss who has to provide the motivation. And Amodakasa, the society which has to approve. I am grateful once again to the TCCI for giving me an opportunity to express a few things. And this is because I started my career at one time in the secretariat by actually being the joint secretary in preparation of the budget for the government of Assam. So I have some understanding of how a budget has to be prepared. Thank you.
Next slide please. Is just on the 3 things, and this is with respect to foreign direct investment, on what is the national context today, what is the global context, and why are we here today. I don't know if you can see that, but we will run through this slide deck. So let's move through the national context first. I think a lot of it has been said already in terms of what the focus of the government is. We will talk about infrastructure and manufacturing here. That's fundamentally what it is. In infrastructure, the kind of spend that we need is almost about twice of what we have done in the past, which is twice of what we have done in the past. It's a very significant one. And by our own admission, almost a quarter of the need doesn't have a visible source. And this is across several areas, as you can see there, regional connectivity, the social sector, and in a number of areas there is foreign investment, which we are seeing very actively. So a number of other inputs, technology and so on. So if we move on to the next slide then, which sectors is this private sector investment coming in? Because as we talked about, there is a huge shortfall of almost 25%. And of the 75, a lot of it is expected to come from private sector. So if you see here, almost 60% of power generation last 2 years has come from private sector. Almost half of it in the last plan period. 57% of all airport traffic, 45% of all cargoes, and almost practically everything off highways. Now this is very fundamental, because if this is going to be the driver, we then need to see A, why we don't get foreign investment here, and B, is there still an opportunity to do that. So moving on to the next slide, this is something very fundamental. We need to see this. If you see the first group, this is where we have that in current prices, the investment opportunity. The first big chunk, I mean, it's basically all sectors, as you can see there. but two big sectors actually constitute. Energy is one, about a third of it, and transport, which includes rails, highways, ports, etc., another 1/3 of it. So 2/3 is energy infrastructure. These are the sectors of my interest. So moving on, what we see as the foreign participation issues. So if you see the sectors which we just talked about, one of the places where foreigners are invested, and we need foreign capital pretty badly, is where it links with other sectors, logistics, ports, where it is dependent on other sectors. In other words, there is a traffic which is guaranteed. If you take in core infrastructure, as such, is a very, very limited appetite. We have not seen anyone. We do a number of road shows, we try to attract them, we don't get. Particularly because the risk appetite is simply not there. Our risks are very high and competition from local institutions. Also in terms of through the foreign participation through the domestic developers. Now we see that through consortium, that's one way of risk mitigation. Likewise in renewable energy through other entities, not directly through the own vehicles. What the government is doing to essentially declog this is the four things listed there. One is the ease of doing business, very critical. Second is, we see a lot of action already going on in terms of fast tracking the clearances and debottlenecking wherever things are stuck. I think we need to take cognizance of that. Ease of infrastructure financing, I think we have gone back and forth between the government and RBI on that, so I will still hedge my bets here. But a number of high priority programs, as you can see there, from smart cities to industrial corridors and renewable energy off late and so on. So these are the things that the government is essentially doing in overall sense. Just I will take two sectors to showcase here to say what specifically it is to give it a more granular feel. So one is if you take highways, we just talked about, practically it has gone all orange and so on. That's true. I think what we are seeing recent signs of is the entire approval process is being put through a scanner to say, do we need to do this? Do we need to simplify? Do we need to make the risks lesser? In fact, the one important statement which came out of the budget is to say that the sovereign needs to take some risk in these PPP projects. That I think very fundamental is to say we can't throw all the risks at the private sector and expect them to function. They're also looking at alternate PPP models to say that it's not just these models, can we have others that will work. And interestingly, for example, can we unbundle the carriage and content, that's a flavor of the period, between who builds the roads, maintains it, and then who collects the toll. Separate them so that the issues of that are removed. Likewise, e-tolling to make it more transparent and less prone to corruption. Likewise, what this unbundling will also bring about is more efficiencies that can come in terms of both tolling as well as in maintenance. Of course, for FDI, a number of opportunities are still there in secondary projects, both portfolio and individual projects. Likewise, if you see the next slide on rail, again, there are three segments. What I would say is very quickly is there are segments which we can move pretty rapidly, which are the terminals, railway sidings, etc., where these are smaller, more manageable projects which can be absorbed very quickly.
Small scale, medium scale, major industries ఎట్లా జరుగుతుంది, ఏ విధంగా డెవలప్ చేయాలనేది ఒక ప్రోగ్రెస్ రిపోర్ట్, స్టేటస్ రిపోర్ట్ కూడా ఇట్ వాస్ ఇన్ఫాక్ట్ ఇట్ ఇస్ ద ఫస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఇట్స్ కైండ్. ఎవ్రీ మంత్ ఫ్రమ్ మార్చ్ ఆన్వర్డ్స్, అంటే April 1st February will give the report for March. ఇట్లా ఎవ్రీ మంత్ రిపోర్ట్ ఒకటి ఉంటుంది. డిస్ట్రిక్ట్ వైజ్ కూడా ప్రతి జిల్లాలో పోయి ఎక్కడెక్కడ చేస్తున్నాం. మోస్ట్ ప్రాబ్లీ ద నెక్స్ట్ 1 month ఎవ్రీథింగ్ విల్ కమ్ టు షేప్.
వ్యవసాయ రంగాల్లో ఎలాంటి అవకాశాలు ఉన్నాయి మన తెలంగాణ జిల్లాలో? ఇది చూడండి.
వ్యవసాయ రంగంలో బాగుంది. ఇన్ఫ్యాక్ట్ సిక్రిస్ అటువంటి అగ్రికల్చర్ యూనివర్సిటీ కూడా ఇన్వాల్వ్ చేస్తున్నాం. విల్ బి గెటింగ్ ఎ రిపోర్ట్ ఆన్ అగ్రికల్చర్ 2-3 weeks వస్తుంది. అగ్రికల్చర్ మంచి అవకాశం ఉంది. గవర్నమెంట్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా, గవర్నమెంట్ స్టేట్ గవర్నమెంట్ కూడా బాగా హెల్ప్ చేస్తుంది. ఎస్పెషల్లీ ఫుడ్ ప్రాసెసింగ్ ఇండస్ట్రీ వచ్చి చాలా కాన్సన్ట్రేట్ చేస్తుంది. అండ్ ఒక 1 week 10 days ఇది ఫుడ్ ప్రాసెసింగ్ ఇండస్ట్రీస్ ఒక రోడ్ మ్యాప్ తయారు చేస్తుంది.
నిజామాబాద్లో కూడా
నిజామాబాద్ ఇస్ వెరీ గుడ్ ప్లేస్. నిజామాబాద్ అయినా, కరీంనగర్ అయినా, వరంగల్ అయినా మూడింటి కూడా ఏర్పాటు చేస్తున్నాం. ఫుడ్ ప్రాసెసింగ్ ప్లాంట్స్ చేస్తున్నాం.
సార్ ఇప్పుడు మెయిన్గా ఇవాళ డిస్కషన్ చేస్తారు కదా సార్, దీని రిపోర్ట్ లాగా తీసుకెళ్ళి మళ్ళీ కేంద్ర ప్రభుత్వానికి ఏమైనా సబ్మిట్ చేయడం కానీ
ఎందుకంటే ఉన్న వాళ్ళంతా మంచి వాళ్ళు.
Yes, I've seen this being always exceeded. This is one target we generally always exceed. I think fundamentally again the state needs to recognize both the policy and regulatory aspects that promote renewables and of course state support which is necessary to expedite that. State actions actually have a very strong impact because the margins are so thin here, particularly in terms of monitoring the projects which are awarded to debottleneck as well as zoning. In other words, to give them the right tariff depending on the natural factors. Green corridor, many states have suffered in terms of not being able to evacuate, and the use of the National Clean Energy Fund. So there are very specific ideas here which we should take forward. And lastly, I will talk about coal and natural resources. Now again, this is one area where we have very substantive local competitive advantage that should be used. Singareni has the country's only sophisticated underground mining. Now worldwide 60% is underground mining. In India, underground mining is only 10%, which means we have an issue of land acquisition, environmental problems, green area, no-go areas, and so on and so forth. Underground mining would make a substantive difference, and that's where we have far more than Coal India here, a competitive advantage. In fact, if you look at the graphic on the left, the dark color at the bottom shows these are the companies we track every year over the last 52 reserves have actually come from developing countries rather than from developed countries like BHP, Rio Tinto, Anglo American. So these have all come from developing countries. As I said, there are far more in the top 40, and in fact, they are the ones who recorded much higher profits than the developed country mining companies. And it's not simply mining for export, these are fundamentally required for infrastructure, for coal, steel, cement, and so on, that we can do that. And as I said, to leverage the competitive advantage we already have. So not just to mine here, that is not the point I'm making, but how well is then this company is engaged with others. A number of companies who have won coal block auction, are we working enough to undertake mining for grab of what is the size of this opportunity? You ask me standing here, I'm